As business owners, we go, 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 go. We're constantly moving, we're constantly doing things, we're constantly keeping up. But let me ask you something. When was the last time you actually sat down and looked at where your time goes every week? Not guessed, not estimated, but actually looked. Because here's what I've noticed with a lot of creative entrepreneurs, and well, honestly, entrepreneurs in general. They say they don't have enough time to do anything. They say they don't have time to market their business, and I do believe them. But when do we do the work to see where the time is actually going? There's almost always time hiding somewhere. It's just not where they thought it would be. Now, today's episode is an amazing question because we've all run into this. But this episode is about marketing with a limited schedule. I'm going to give you a strategy that works, but I'm also going to give you a homework assignment that I genuinely think will change how you see your week. It's going to be a little uncomfortable, but in the best way. So let's get into it. Welcome back to Hey Tori, the podcast where I answer your real digital marketing questions, the ones you're Googling at midnight and not quite finding the answer to. So I'm Tori McElwain, digital marketing coach, quilter, and founder of the Digital Marketing Magic Coaching Program, the DMMC, which is built specifically for quilters, crafters, and creative entrepreneurs who want to grow a real business without drowning in social media. Today's question is squarely in what I call nurture strategy. It's one of my three marketing pillars alongside lead strategy and launch or sales strategy. Nurture is the work you do between launches to stay in a relationship with your audience. It's how you keep people warm, build trust over time, and make sure that when you show up with an offer, people are already ready to say yes. So if you've been feeling like you're falling behind because you can't show up every single day, this episode is going to reframe that for you. So if you notice a slight change in my voice, it is because I am sick. So yeah, this happens every time I launch. So I'm riding the wave here. Not super sick, just a little bit. But I've been where I believe this person is coming from. I was working full time. I had two little kids just like 2 years ago. This is me. And I had both patterns and three on demand workshops that I had recorded live. So they were edited and put up into an on demand platform. I was, again, working full time, 40 hours a week. I was lucky enough to have a hybrid job where I was mainly working from home. I had a baby in daycare and a very interesting kindergarten experience for my oldest. And it was a lot. I had this drive to build up the digital marketing magic coaching program, to write a book, and to continuously sell my patterns and my on demand classes while working full time, being a mom, and hardly sleeping. Now, my memory is a little foggy because of that lack of sleep, but I did have limited time to market. So I've been there. I really, truly, honestly have been there to really market like very limited time. First, let me get into the actual question. So this person said, and this is anonymous. So I don't know any context. Well, I know a little bit of context from what they shared, but again, when I have a person in front of me with digital marketing magic coaching, it's most usually get a lot more detail. But okay, so here's a question that came in. If you had to trim things down to the absolute essentials, what would your 30 to 60-minute per week marketing plan include to keep customers warm or engaged? It's a slash, so warm slash engaged between launches slash enrollment periods, especially thinking about times when you're not creating as much. That's exciting to share. Like, for instance, working on a project for a lookbook or writing a new book, or when life is so busy that there's just not much new to share. So I love this question because it's honest. Most people pretend like they have more capacity than they do, and then they feel guilty when they can't keep up. But this person is being really real about where they are, and that's actually a great starting point for this. So here's the thing I want you to hear right up front: 30 to 60 minutes a week, it can be enough, but it's going to be slow going. And only if every single minute is going it to the right place. And right now, for most people in this situation, it's not. So, not because they're not doing anything wrong, but because they haven't stopped to look. So, that's exactly where we're going to start today. So here is what I think I'm seeing underneath this question. So when someone tells me they only have 30 minutes to 60 minutes a week for marketing, the first thing I want to know is where's the rest of the time going? Because most of the time there are tasks sitting inside that week that could be delegated. They could be deleted or maybe they could be systemized. And this person may not have taken the time to actually look closely enough to know what could be delegated, deleted, or systematized. Now, that doesn't mean the time that they do free up has to go to marketing, but it might give them more breathing room. So, nurture marketing with this limited time, like I said, it's doable, but it requires that time to be very protected and to dive into just the right things. And you can't protect the time if you haven't taken a chance to audit your time. Now, I'm going to answer this question. So don't think I'm just going to go, hey, you need to audit your time, but it is really important. So after I answer this question, I'm going to go into that. The second thing I see is this actually is possibly two separate problems tangled together. So there's nurture, which is keeping the relationship warm with people already on your list. And then there's lead growth or bringing in new people into your world in the first place. Now, this person may have ads going. I don't know. They may have automatized their lead generation. So they may be continuously bringing people in. But with most creative entrepreneurs, they see the nurture as the whole picture and they don't realize that they still need to have a lead generation or something bringing people in. They're different jobs and they require different strategies. And with only 30 to 60 minutes a week, you cannot do both simultaneously at the same time. So we're going to separate them and sequence them. So nurture first, and then we'll talk a little bit about growth. So nurturing. So this is directly answering her question. Inside inside the DMMC, our nurture strategy is built on one core principle, and that is staying in relationship with your audience in a way that feels human and consistent, even if your life doesn't feel like it. So the best way to do that, and I'm sure you've heard of it, is of course your email newsletter. And I emphasize email because that is where we usually have the biggest bang for our buck, right? That's where we can spend the most time and get the most out of it. However, if you know that most of your paying customers come from a different channel, so let's say you have really put time in on the back end on your YouTube, and that is where a lot of your time is going, and that's where a lot of your paying customers are coming from, then you may need to look at YouTube rather than email. So keep that part in mind. But I'm going to talk about email because that is where the majority of us get the best return on investment. So your email newsletter, you want to make sure you can structure it where it's easy to send out. So I'm sure you've heard that before. So here's a few suggestions. I would reuse and reshare core content. I would also, especially if you are a person who only has 30 minutes a week to market, I would share others' content. And then I would sneak in a note and be like, I'm working on a secret project. And when I'm able to reveal it, it's going to be awesome. And when you're able to reveal it. So maybe your secret sewing is going to be revealed at market. And so they know, oh, wait, we don't have market anymore. Maybe it's going to be revealed in the fall lookbooks and you're really excited to share when it's ready. Having that little bit of this is what I'm working on. And knowing that you're working on a lookbook for a fabric manufacturer or a new book can raise not only curiosity, but a little bit of authority because you're working with a bigger brand or you're working on a big project like a book. I would also look at having a product of the week or product of the month, depending on how often you send your newsletter. I would suggest for those who haven't really dived into email marketing, sending a newsletter every other week or every week. I believe that once a month, it's really hard to keep you top of mind for most of our customers. So that is something it's easy to set up tomorrow. You have 1 hour where you sit down, you go pull one of your more popular blog posts that you haven't talked about in, 3 months. Make sure it's still up to date. So spend 15 of those minutes going through the blog post, making sure it's up to date, editing it a little bit, maybe switching out a few pictures. It's great for Google to see you updating your already standing content. It likes that for SEO, authority, of relevance. It likes it for so many different reasons. So go in there, tweak your blog post, give yourself 15 minutes. Then take either a snippet of that blog post or summarize it, stick that in your newsletter. Write that little bit about, hey, I'm working on a secret project. Here's what I have. Here is something that's going to be amazingly useful for you. It's one of my most popular things that you can see. And even if it's not one of your more popular blog posts, you can say, this is a blog post I wrote for the quilter who is struggling with this, or because I found inspiration in the spring, because right now it's spring. So tell them why you want to share it with them and why you wrote it, and then invite them to read more. So that gives them nurture content. It gives them a touch point with you. It keeps you top of mind. And then you can share another person's content. So let's say you have a teacher friend who's launching a really cool class and you know it's going to be great for your audience because, you know, your styles are fairly similar, but it's not something you're going to dive into. That is a great piece of content to share and just share how cool this cool thing that your friend is doing in the quilting industry. I would include something for sale. That can be really easy to put together. That can take you it will probably take you a full hour to do, and then I would send it. And that is what I would spend that hour a week on is that email. If it is more of your core content where your buyers are coming in from where you're creating core content. When I say core content, just to pause there really quick, core content is long form content. So it's blog posts. It is long form video like you would put up on YouTube. Maybe it's a podcast. That is your long form content. That is what I would share with your email list, or vice versa. That is where I would concentrate that hour is creating a piece of long form content, which is your core content, which then you can break it up and put all over social media. Because ideally, if not ideally, but realistically, if that's where your buyers are coming from, that's probably more your strategy. Okay, now here's the other thing. So during that time I just shared a few minutes ago where I was doing all the things, that sounds almost impossible to do. And honestly, my health was horrible. I do not suggest doing what I did. I would not suggest that for anybody. I went straight to burnout very, very quickly. And honestly, my memory is very fuzzy on it. So, what I did, if this is truly all the time you have to market, I would set up an evergreen system. And I set mine up in 2 days. So, what I did, I before I switched gears to teaching teachers and then digital marketing, I was running ads for Lead Magnet that did really well. It was bringing in leads um, at the optimal rate. Like it was doing really well. So what I did was I hooked that Lead Magnet up to a sales sequence of emails. It was a 2 week, I believe it was 2 weeks, 2 week sales sequence. Then it would drop them automatically into a 6-month nurture sequence. And then it would drop them back into the sales sequence. And then if they did not purchase, they were kicked out. I know it sounds kind of harsh and not this is not going to work for everybody. But if you truly have no time to market, this may be an avenue to look at. Now, you can also, if you're able to keep up the newsletter after this, you can have them, instead of kicking them out, you can have them join your general newsletter. I had no time to nurture that list, so that is what I set up. Now, how I did this. So I use MailerLite. It's called automations, and it's very similar in any back end of your email service provider. So Flowdesk, it's very similar. MailChimp, it's very similar, but you're going to go to automations. And as soon as someone signs up for that freebie, that lead magnet, what they would get is, of course, the email that says, here's your lead magnet. And then depending on what you want to sell them, what the upsell is, depends on how soon you're going to email them again. Right. So we're going to email probably a welcome sequence, 1 to 2 emails talking about who you are. Then after that, you can invite them to join. Mine was an on demand workshop. That's what I did. It was on demand. It was I had a beginner quilting series and then I had a skill building block of the month. So I introduced the beginner series. And with each email, if they had joined a workshop, it assigned them to a different group. So they would stop receiving the email sequence. And they would then continue on with a nurture sequence for that course and then get dropped into my newsletter, which at the time, like I said, I wasn't writing a newsletter for them. So honestly, they would have bought the course and then it probably would stop. If I saw that as an avenue to keep going, I would have built that out a little bit better. Okay, so then after they received the sales sequence for 2 weeks, if they didn't purchase, they would then go into a nurture sequence for 6 months. That means I wrote 12 newsletters in 2 days, and they were very simple. And what I did was I introduced skill building blog posts for them to go through and read. And a few of them had YouTube videos attached. So, like, I had one about borders that had a YouTube video attached. So, I used my past content to set up this nurture system for them. So my thinking was that they're coming in as a brand new quilter because that's where the lead night was bringing in quilters who have only been quilting for 1 to 2 years. So then they had an option of doing very basic on-demand classes or skill building class. If they did not purchase either one, and the class was a block of the month, so it was a long time commitment. Then they would go into the 6 months nurture where it's like, okay, the first couple emails might be all about color. The next one might be all about structure. The next one would be educating them on what applique is, what foundation paper piecing is. I kind of get them interested in the subjects that I taught in the block of the month. And then I would launch the block of the month back to them after that 6 months. I did not have any conversions because I opened it and then I dived into digital marketing. So it was a great way to show them, here's an evergreen sequence that you can create. It was made with a lot of heart, a lot of love for the quilters that are coming in, but I had no time to otherwise show up for them. And if I were to run people through that, that is where I can really take the analytics on the back end and see if it works. So this works a lot. This works very well for many types of businesses. It's just not one that I have personally tested. So one that I absolutely loved, where I kind of got the idea, was when I joined Paper and Spark. And her email sequence after I joined was so spot on. It was beautiful. Like, it was beautiful, but I didn't have an Etsy shop. So I wasn't her ideal customer at the time. So I want you to know that this type of sales sequence works very well for many different businesses. It's set up for a lot of authors where a person will come in as interested. They will go through this sequence of an upsell, whether it's a course or a coaching opportunity with the author or anything like that, and then they're dropped out. So this is something that you could try. If you literally only have 30 minutes a week to nurture your people, you can set up an automatic nurture sequence. Now, how does that work with launching? So what my plan was to pause it. So if they're in the middle of a 6-month nurture sequence, I would pause it and launch my pattern. Or the other idea I had was I wouldn't even talk to them, right? I would just let that run. And then now I would have had them drop into my newsletter and then just launch to my newsletter. So that is if you're able to bring people in. Right. So what I would do to bring people through that sequence would be an ad. I would set up a meta ad to bring people through. And then again, I'll look at the back end. What's working, what's not, when did they drop off? Then I can tweak that sales system and that sales and nurture system and keep it evergreen. So those are probably my top two suggestions to answer this question directly. Okay, so let's talk about the other side of this coin, which is growth. So if you're only nurturing and not bringing in new people, eventually there's no audience left to nurture. So once your sequence is built and running, your next priority is lead growth, like we talked about. So if you don't want to touch ads, that's totally fine. You want to look at where you can get, again, the most return on investment for your time. Right now, while I'm recording this, summits are doing amazing. That is where you can reach one to many. Many of them are pre-recorded, so you can record on your own time and send it in. I've had members grow from a few hundred subscribers to thousands with just one well-run summit. Okay, now going back to the question and pulling just a little bit of context from it, I can see that you write patterns. So if you're a pattern designer, and you really only have 60 minutes a week to market, I wouldn't even look at marketing one-on-one or like business to consumer, if you are strictly a pattern designer, I would take that hour and look at distributors, look at shops, look at online retailers. I would not spend time marketing one to one. Now, if you're a teacher, that's a little bit different because you are marketing directly to consumer, directly to your students. But if you are strictly a pattern designer, I would really consider looking at a business model or marketing model where you are not relying on one-off sales and you're using your time wisely. If you're a teacher, I would look at looking at again one to many where you can find those students. A lot of that might be guilds. It might be summits. Again, you may need to sign up for the Global Quilt Connection and join their teacher it's not called teacher summit, but teacher spotlight. Those would be a better return on your time than trying to nurture one to one. Okay, so let's recap what I would actually do. So first, email would get all my time. It wouldn't be Instagram, it wouldn't be Facebook. Email is still the number one conversion channel for most creative businesses. Even if you only have an hour a week, that is where it would go. Second, I would build that sequence. I would either block off an entire weekend and knock the whole thing out, or I would build it one piece at a time. You don't need 10 emails before you start. Just write a quick welcome email and then write the sales sequence. And if you're in the DMMC, we do have SELA, which can help you framework that sales sequence and then start the nurture sequence. And each time they hit an ending point in your sequence, just have them drop into your newsletter. And then don't write a newsletter until this sequence is done. You build it one at a time. And before you know it, it'll be done. Third, if you can create any kind of long form content, a blog post, a video, a podcast episode, do it. Long form content is searchable, which means it keeps working while you create. It's what really drives that idea of make money while you sleep, but it does take time. So one optimized blog post, it can show up in search results for months or years, right? So it does have huge benefits, but it does build slowly. It works best when you're writing about things people are actually searching for. So it's a long game, but it's worth playing if you can sustain it. If this is if you're going to have this business for years, this is where the time goes next. And then fourth, and this is where your homework comes in. So before you do any of this, I want you to do a time study. Now, I know a lot of you have done this before, but many of the people that I've spoken to about doing a time study have never put action to it. Like they do the time study, like, okay, this is where my time goes. Great. Now let's take it another step. So let's talk about how you can do that. So this is my peek behind the curtain of the DMMC. I have a time study that I put together from like 4 other people's time studies because I'm like, okay, this one does this really well. This time study did this really well. This time study, I love what they added in here that these other 2 didn't have. So it's kind of piecemeal together from my own experience of doing time studies. So usually the people that need this are the people who are running at full speed all day, every day, and they don't have time to do the essential things they need to do. So if you're one of those people that are running full time, even if you are working full time and trying to run a business on the side and you literally have no time, this is going to be for you. When I was in Hello 7, a club for Rachel Rogers, and if you don't know who Rachel Rogers is, please take a minute to Google her. She's amazing. She gives great advice. She has a podcast, she has all of it. Um, she has a framework inside her club, and I think now it's called the Mastermind. I think she's restructured it, but there are 7 layers or levels. Yeah, 7 levels of her membership. The first one is Hello 1, the next one is Hello 2, the next one is Hello 3. Now, Hello 1 is your baby. You just started, you're not making any money, right? And then Hello 2, you're starting to make some money. You're probably around the 2,000 a month range, maybe to 4,000 a month. And then the third, she calls it Busy Bee. Busy Bee. So this is a natural evolution of building a business is where you go from not making anything, learning so much, building a foundation, figuring out what's working, and then you're experimenting usually at like 2. Now, she goes into way more detail. But the third one is you're running full speed. You are doing all the things and you're a busy bee. You are doing so much that there is no time to slow down. And I am telling you, that is when it's time to slow down. Because before you can build a better business or a better marketing system, you need to see clearly what is actually happening with your time. So here's how a time study works. So for 2 weeks, that's it, just 2 weeks, you track what you're doing every 15 minutes throughout your day. Now, I know it sounds annoying, but I carried around a notebook for 15 minutes. That's the first time. The second time I did it, I had it on my phone, which was a little bit easier because, like, I carry my phone everywhere with me. So you track what you're doing every 15 minutes. So there was social media break here. I spent an hour on a quilt. I spent 3 hours writing. I spent, 2 hours doing laundry. I spent an hour making dinner. Um, and this time block, maybe after dinner for like 2 hours, was family time. And then after the kids went to bed, I spent an hour figuring out a newsletter, that kind of thing. You're time blocking, you're writing down what you're doing. And at the end of those 2 weeks, you got to sit down with what you have and you ask yourself 3 questions about every task you see. And this is the part that everybody skips. This is the part where they're like, okay, no, I understand where my time is going. Great. What are we going to do about it? So here is what I want you to ask yourself. Can I delegate anything on this list? So is there something on this list that someone else could do? Maybe it's a family member. One little thing that I started doing was making sure my son put his own homework in his backpack. Do you know how much time that was wasting in my own brain? Like, it wasn't even the actual task itself. It was just, I have to remember that. It's like, no, I'm putting it on him, right? What can your family do? The other thing I've done is have my oldest son clean the bathroom. He earns an hour of video game time to clean his own bathroom, right? So, like, I don't just get 30 minutes of him completely busy doing something awesomely productive for the entire family, taking something off my plate, but then he spends an hour on his Switch, and I have an hour to do whatever I need to do, right? Okay, so there's something to think about. Family member also, can you have your spouse or another adult in your life take over something for you? That might be an honest conversation to have with them. And it can be a hard conversation to bring in a spouse and say, "Hey, I'm doing something really hard for the next like few weeks. Can you please take over the laundry a little bit? Or can you help me, prep dinner? Can you do XYZ, right? Can you handle the dishes for these next 2 weeks so that I can focus and get this book done or something like that?" So family member help. Do you have a teenager? Can they do something? Bring in people. Do you have a tool that you can use? Something you can use to systematize? So one thing I do with this podcast is the transcript is used to make the blog post, right? So I don't have to write everything out. I've already spoken for, 30 to 45 minutes on this subject. I don't need to rewrite a blog post. I can use a transcript. Okay. And I'm spending a lot of time here because I feel like this is where a lot of people miss is delegate. The last thing I'm going to suggest. Oh, wait, before that, I'm going to talk about systems. Don't forget about systems. So maybe you can do online grocery order instead of spending 4 hours to drive over to the grocery store, find all the groceries, load them up, take them home, unload them. Maybe you order them on your phone. It takes you 30 minutes. Then you go pick them up and unload them. It takes an hour rather than 4 hours. Maybe you could look into a laundry service. They're relatively well priced. So don't knock it until you look it up. Same thing I'm going to say next. Do you have a VA? Do you have a virtual assistant? A virtual assistant can save you so much time. And yes, it does take time on the front end to find a virtual assistant to bring them in. But if your business is growing to the point where you have no time to market, then your task needs to be to get more tasks off your plate because you are the main marketer in your business and you need to have time to bring people in and to nurture your people. Now, I'm not talking directly to the person who put this question in. They may already have a VA. right? They may already have these systems in place. They may be fully maxed out on time and they might want one of the other strategies I've already suggested. But if you're listening to this and you've never delegated your time, then it's time to do a time study and see where you can delegate. So, delegate is probably the most important. The next is, what can you delete? Is there something you're doing out of habit or obligation that isn't actually moving your business forward? So, not everything that feels busy is useful. Maybe it's not a full delete, maybe it's a pause. Can you pause doing something so that you can tackle the tasks you need to do and market your business? Can it just be a pause for a month or two? And lastly, here's the system. Oh, okay. So I put this as a third one. But systematize. I always think of delegation and system as like very similar. But is there something that you're doing manually that can be made as an automation? Is there something you're recreating from scratch every week that could be a template or could be batched? Or again, can you automate it so it takes a fraction of the time? One thing that I do is currently I have a VA who sets up my newsletter template. I walk her through the different sections. When I hired her, I walked her through the different sections. And if you're in the DMMC, there is a section from my VA, not from me, but from an expert on VA and systematizing. And she walks you through how to set up your business to bring in a virtual assistant. That was amazing, honestly. And it's been a lifesaver to have her in my business. And she just sets up, her main job is to set up my newsletter template and to set up all the reminder emails for the DMMC and SPI, because I'm also doing the self-publishing incubator. That is her main job right now, is just to set up my email newsletter and take over the email reminders. So I don't have to create those from scratch every week. And she doesn't even create them from scratch every week. We've created templates for all of them. So she copies and pastes, puts in the new dates, makes sure the link still works, and she's like, good to go. But it saves me at least 4 hours a week because she goes in and does that. Okay. When my DMMC members go through this process, they almost always find time they didn't know was there. So it could be 20 minutes of scrolling that got counted as research. Maybe it's a task that they're doing manually that a $10 app could probably handle. Maybe it's a dozen small things that add up to an hour or more when they're looked at together. So here's what I want you to do with that, with what you find. I want you to walk through all of the tasks that you have done over the last 2 weeks. So this would probably be easiest if you list them out. I want you to circle which ones brought in money and energy, and then the rest of them, I want you to find a way where you can either systematize it, delete it, or delegate it. That's a challenge. And I want to hear how it goes. Let me know how it goes. I don't care if the podcast is over or not. I want to hear how it goes, because when I did this, it was life changing. Like I told you, the last time I did this, I had a full-time job. I was running the DMMC. I just launched it. I was creating it from scratch. So every month I had a full workshop. It was usually 2.5 hours where we sat down and we recorded, and I broke that up to be resources in the DMMC. I was running a pattern design business and workshops with those on-demand classes. I hadn't quite systematized it yet. I had the idea in my brain, but I hadn't reached it. I hadn't reached it yet at that point. I had 2 little kids. I wasn't sleeping. And I did this, and it was life-changing. All right, so here's your Hey Tori takeaway. And I want you to grab something to write this down, because it's also your homework for the next 2 weeks. So I hope that the person who sent in that question recognize themselves and want to use one of the strategies that I shared, whether it is coming up with a newsletter template that could be easy to fill in, or systematizing your nurture sequence where you can pause, launch, and then restart it. And I would hope that that person listening also takes time to do this homework. But if everyone else, I still want you to do this homework. So for the next 2 weeks, I want you to write down your time. Write down your time. Ask yourself those 3 questions. What can I do to either delegate, delete, or systematize all the tasks that I'm doing that are not bringing in energy and money? So remember, we're circling all the things that bring in energy and money. Everything else, we're going to see how we can delegate it, delete it, or systematize it. That's it. That's a whole assignment. And then come back to me and tell me what you did, how it worked. Did it change anything? Did it make you mad? because it made me mad because I realized I had to get rid of some stuff. But it also made me more firm on my boundaries, which helps a lot. And there's a little bit more to this time study, but that is the main point of it. All right, so if you send me a message, again, I'd love, love, love to hear. You can email me. I now have a domain email called hey@heytori.tech, so you can email me directly, or you can message me on Instagram. You know how to reach me. So before I go, before I go, a couple of things. First, the time study worksheet, the full blown one, is a resource inside the Digital Marketing Magic Coaching Program. So if you're already a member of the DMMC, head to stage 4 of the Break It Up, and you'll find it there, along with a video that shows you how to systematize your business to bring in a VA, done by my VA, my virtual assistant, Kathleen, who's absolutely amazing. And you can't hire her because she has a full schedule. I'm sorry. But there are some amazing VAs out there. So if you're not yet a member and you want access to the time study and our AI tools, including Sila, which I mentioned earlier, you can learn more and sign up with the link in the show notes. And second, if today's episode was useful, the best thing you can do is to maybe share it with another creative entrepreneur who you know is a maxed out person or in a maxed out season. Word of mouth genuinely is the best marketing I have, just the same as you. And I appreciate every single share. All right, guys, 2 weeks. Do your time study, ask those 3 questions. That's your job. And I'll be back soon.